Good morning, brothers and sisters. Allow me this morning to take you all to a journey so much back in time. I'll take you all the way to the book of Genesis, and we will be having a journey back to the very start of the ancient civilization of the world, which is Egypt. And then we have also Palestine and Israel. We will be focusing in the book of Genesis, chapter 37, all the way to the end of Genesis, which covers a span of at least 13 years, up to 20 years and more. And then this covers also 13 books of the Gospel. So it's going to be a long journey, but we'll try to make it short and painful as we can. And also, I will try my best through the grace of God to deliver the message in English. But please bear with me, because there will be a few lines that we will be mentioning in our vernacular. Yeah, so please bear with that. Is that okay? Yeah. So the title of today's message is Becoming Fruitful Through Affliction. So this is from the life of Joseph. He is very famous, di ba? Even our kids. Oh, thank you so much. A lot of materials have been produced, either videos or comics or magazines about Joseph the Dreamer. And it's so popular because there's a lot to learn from this story. And the book of Genesis is one of the most enjoyable Old Testament book. It's full of memorable stories of people and events. It is a crucial book to know, because for the rest of the books of the Bibles, they will always refer back to the Old Testament. And the pace of the story kind of slows down to develop the personalities of Jacob and Joseph. This father and son is full of human faults and oddities. Seeing their fully human personalities, try to understand what God's plan were for them as individuals, as through them for the restoration of the whole world marked by sin. Let us pray. Lord God, bless us today, Father God, that as we enjoy this privilege to gather to worship you in truth and in spirit, Panginoon, give us the wisdom, the clarity of minds, and the enlightenment, Father God, to discern your message today and to understand fully. Give us, Lord, clarity and proclaim your message, Lord God, your truth today. As we pray this morning, use your servant as your mouthpiece, and hide me behind your cross, Father God, that they may see your goodness and your glory, and not my imperfections, Father God. Lord, be with us today and be in our midst, and allow us to enjoy this time, Panginoon. Allow us to absorb your word and keep it in our minds and make it a part of our lifestyle. Amen. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. In this sermon, we will look at the life of Joseph. Joseph's story is the last of the brotherly battles of Genesis, wherein we know that Cain and Abel, Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, they all quarreled. God did not choose Joseph over his brothers, as he did Abraham over Lot, Isaac over Ishmael, and Jacob over Esau. Family battles, so the closer they are, the harder they fight. Nobody, it seems, can fight like brothers and sisters. And their very closeness seems to rub salt in their wounds, di ba? Rarely we see strangers that you engage into a hard fight. Would you agree? kung sino pa yung merong close attachment, di ba? Kung sino yung may pinagsamahan, yung may nakaraan, yung may malalim na ugnayan, at yung may meron pong malalim na past, ay sila yung malamang na mag-away ng matindi. Ito po yung fact of life. Dahil po maraming pwedeng isumbat, maraming pwedeng ibalik, maraming pwedeng i-compare. And there is a lot na pwede pong yung balik-balikan. Di ba? Sometimes, some people tend to be hysterical, while some become historical. Historical means talagang inuungkat lahat from the very past, di ba? Kahit kung sa mag-asawa or sa mga magkakapatid, and to some friends also. Like, ginawa ko sa yun noon parang susubot mo ngayon, parang gano'n. Marami kang pwedeng balikan. So this is something that we can all relate to. And ang maganda sa atin bilang Christians ay wala na po yan. As Christians, hindi na po yan. Ano na po ang nangibabaw sa ngayon? It is respect and love which is like reigning over us. God did not choose Joseph over his brothers as he did Abraham over Lot, Isaac over Ismael, and Jacob over Esau. The brothers' reconciliation opened the way for them to become one family, which is the 12 tribes. And it is actually a single nation. But the story leads on. Tuloy yung story yan. Kahit na po nangyari yung they became so prosperous and they became so numerous, they still had no land after all this. They were so successful in becoming a lot in numbers while they were in Egypt. But in their stay there, they remained without land. And so Genesis ends happily with a note of suspense. So, namatay si Joseph, namatay si Jacob, pero yung tanong dun is, when will their bones be returned back to Israel, to the land where God promised? It is easy to see the troubles surrounding Joseph. He obediently walks almost, he was sent to go 100 miles. 100 miles means 160 kilometers. Like Jacob was so casual, go check on your brothers. They were like 160 kilometers away herding the flocks. The flocks means their livestock. It could be sheep, goat, or cow, or maybe some camels. Yeah, so try to imagine Joseph walking down from Sharjah to Abu Dhabi. And this is not through an open or established road. This is a place wherein he has to go to the ridges of the mountains and in the desert. Normally, it would take 7 days to travel this much distance kung meron pong road. But in a plane na wala rin tong track or road, it will take you like 9 days. But in the desert or the forest, it will take you at least 13 days to get to track that distance, one way po. So he was sent to check on his brothers that far in a land called Gicm. Gicm is in modern days this is called Nablus. And he was coming down from Hebron. Hebron is in Palestine. This is the disputed land in the West Bank. So he was told to go to Gicm, and upon reaching them, he learned that their brothers moved from Gicm to another place, which is Dothan. So he went to find them. You see, these people, the Arabs and the others living in this region, they are typically nomads. Nomads, they move from place to place. So they love walking, they love trekking distances. So I somehow realized why these people are so tall and they have long limbs. Because they need them to track these distances. Unlike us, tayo po kasi tamad tayo. Dalawang kanto lang, gusto ko mag-tricycle din. gusto ko mag-coaching. So we don't need long limbs. Okay na po tayo sa ganito kasi mahirap sa tricycle. But kidding aside, in this story, just like in the challenges within our life, we need to pull our eyes away from the challenges or from the troubles around us. And we need to see God's amazing provision. Joseph set his 11 brothers against him. 11 brothers because, like, actually, marami pong asawa si Jacob. Yeah. And kaya sila marami. So they were 11 because Jacob has many wives. And so he started, or he set off by telling his 11 brothers, medyo ano po siya, medyo tactless siya. I had this dream. I had this dream that you guys, among you were bowing down to me. This was his story in his dream. And Joseph and his brothers, they fought furiously, and they really fought bitterly, and almost to death, almost to the point that sila pinapatayan. He was his father's favorite, and perhaps dahil siya ang favorite, he was often flaunting about it. So pinagkayabang niya po yan, siya yung favorite. So meron ding si Joseph, he was kind of spoiled and he was really enjoying it. And then, so when his brothers got a chance, they paid him back. It just happens to be a dry cistern. No bones are broken after throwing him into a cistern. No poisonous creatures like snakes or scorpions were there. So within minutes or hours at most, a caravan just happens to be coming by. So it just happens to be heading to Egypt, and here or the proprietors have cash. They don't just have their goods or items or merchandise to sell, but they also have cash. So these brothers, they sold Joseph to these traveling merchants who took him to Egypt. So these brothers, never expecting to see him again, they kind of fabricated the story to their dad, saying that he was killed by some wild animals. Now Joseph just happens to be sold to Potiphar into some other service. Backing up Joseph just happens to find someone who just happened to hear his brothers in Shechem, who, by the way, doesn't choose to kill Joseph since he was part of the family. And most amazingly, the good thing about Joseph, he's the type who is stopping and asking people about the election. So meron siya mga proof, or meron na nakakala na siya may nandoon. I can see God's hand in so many ways when I look for the blessings and the protection. On a different thought, I get it that these are his brothers. But I saw a strong lesson for myself and my family, and my children, about carefully choosing our inner circle of friends. Let's put it this way. If the people you are closest with are the ones who are willing to throw you in the cistern and kill you, ay wala pong sa yung pagiging circle of friends nyo, and then your only resort is, I want to make that phone call to somebody or among my circle to give me a hand or a help. Wala pong sa yun. Kasi they are the ones who by themselves will throw you down in that cistern. So it will not do you much good. So do I spend my time with people that would come to my protection, or people that would throw me under the bus when they are angry? So this is something we should look about in our life. Do I spend or develop this friendship with people around me who will come for help, or these are the kind of friends who will throw me in the bus when they are so upset? And how strong would my friends stand against the sentiment of the group? meron bang sa grupo na yan na nadamayan ka? Kung majority ay gusto kang itapon or patayin, di ba? So God used these sad turn of events to eventually take the entire family of Israel to Egypt, protecting and multiplying them. Joseph's last memories of Israel before his brothers sold him was of Gicm and Dothan. He believed that God would one day return the nation to Canaan, and so he gave the command for his bones to be carried back with them and buried there. But God had other plans. In Egypt, he gave the interpretation to several dreams. It was his ticket to prominence. So it was his special skill. Kayo po, ano po yung special skill? Ito pa sa ating social media, daming ganun tanong. Ano ang yung special skill? Kaya kong gumastos kahit walang panggastos. Mga ganun. Kaya kong kumain kahit busog. Mga ganun po sinasabi eh. Kaya kong matulog agad kahit nagigising ko lang. Yun yung mga sinasabi nila. Some hilarious, ano po, no? They thought it's a special skill. But lahat po tayo merong special skills. We were gifted with this. The question is, how are we using it to glorify God? And Egyptians of that day, they were so fascinated with dreams. In fact, a lot of archaeologists, they discovered some lengthy textbooks on dream interpretation. And with that ability, Joseph found himself at the top of Pharaoh's government. But success was not enough. The Bible story goes on from there. For God wanted forgiveness within the family. A family batched Joseph's brothers out of Palestine. They came to Egypt looking for food. So kneeling before Joseph, who is looking at that time, he was already looking so Egyptian, so they did not recognize him being Joseph. So they begged for right to buy food. It is an amazing story, the kind of story that dreams are built on. So after many unexpected twists and turns, and 13 years of toil and affliction, God blessed Joseph in an unimaginable way. As a result, Joseph became the second most powerful man in Egypt. We said 13 years because he was bought as a slave at the age of 17. And then by the time he was 30, the Pharaoh appointed him to be the second highest civil servant in Egypt. So that was 13 years. Joseph is in charge of Egypt, and according to the Genesis 41, from verses 41 to 44, so Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in a chariot as his second in command. And people shouted before him, make way, make way. Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, but without your word, no one will leave hand or foot in all Egypt. Yung bigat po, sabi niya, ako ang Pharaoh. Pero Joseph, kung wala kang command, nobody will move. Nobody will leave a single hand or foot sa buong Egypt. So ganun po siya ka-powerful. And thereafter, God blessed Joseph with 2 sons. Before the years of famine came, two sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. He named his second son Ephraim, which had the meaning of being fruitful through affliction. So the second son he named Ephraim and said, "It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." By the way, the word affliction is translated suffering in the NIV version. So, let's look at these three afflictions Joseph went through in the period between the ages of 17 until 30, and how God made him fruitful at every stage, culminating him becoming Pharaoh's top executive and Egypt's highest civil servant. So that the story begins at Genesis 37, verse 2, when Joseph was just 17 years old. Now here's the proposition. God can make you fruitful through every affliction you face.
Amen.
So what affliction or suffering are you going through right now? And how are you reacting to it? Can you believe for the God of Joseph to come through for you? We may have something in common with Joseph. Actually, Joseph was a foreigner in Egypt. Very much like us, we are foreigners here. We are, maybe some call us expatriates. So we are like people working outside our country. But being an expatriate did not stop Joseph from becoming fruitful. His sad experience did not bring him down. So you may be doing that tiring routine inside that kitchen. It's an everyday. Maybe you may be toiling in that huge villa every day, including the people living in it. You may be taking care of them. You may be dealing with that harsh manager. I don't know. Or every single day. You may be exposed to the extreme weather outside if you're working outside. If you're an engineer, you may be exposed to danger on site. So however difficult it may be, and at times demoralizing, sometimes this is our sentiment, demoralizing. Excuse me. What's your testimony and your language? Your habits? Observe the way you dress. Be prayerful and pray for the success and prosperity of your company. Love your enemy. Serve your employer with honesty. Do not curse those who persecute you. And be a good example to your colleagues. Get along well with them, kahit na hindi Pilipino. And not getting influenced by them, but in fact be the influencer. Be the light and the salt to them. The three of the afflictions through which Joseph became fruitful are, number one, he became fruitful through rejection. And this first item is covered actually in the chapter 37. As Joseph's brothers take revenge on him because of their envy. So from Genesis 37, verses 2 to 5, I will read from the verses. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And he brought their father a bad report about them. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. So when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers. and they hated him the more. See, brothers and sisters, this is the negative effect of favoritism, especially in the family. I remember my employer back in Egypt. He has 4 wives. He's a Muslim. He has 4 wives, and he has more than 10 kids. So at the age of 80, his youngest is like 6 years old. So definitely a guy like him would like spend more time with this young girl who is the source of her joy. Di ba ba? Parang ako niya na, pero yun po yung gusto niyang anak. So, ang tendency nun is, yung mga older siblings, they tend to get envy because of the attention he was giving to this, to the youngest. And, in Genesis 37, from 12 to 31, this is the story one. I'll go through it. Joseph sold his brothers, and now these brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Gicm. And Israel said to Joseph, "As you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Gicm, which is not loose. Come, I am going to send you to them." "Very well," he replied. So he said to him, "Go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me." Yun lang ang mission niya. Go there and see how they're doing and see how the animals are, and then come back and then tell me what is the situation. Because, you know, Joseph was his favorite, so Joseph is his spy among the brothers. So he was sending them to spy and then report back to him. So, then he sent him off from the valley of Hebron. Sorry. So I will just explain yung ruta ni Joseph. Joseph was actually originating from Hebron. So he had to go to these mountain ridges to reach Gicm. Gicm, which is now close, this is like 100 miles, so that's 160 kilometers. But when he get there, his brothers were not there. They have moved on further. They have moved on further to Gicm. So he followed them, and he found them there. So this is the path. So definitely this will be approximately 200 kilometers. So that's the label. Joseph goes from Hebron to Gicm to Dothan looking for his brothers. When Joseph arrived at Gicm, a man found him wandering around in the fields and asked him, "What are you looking for?" He replied, "I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing the flocks?" "They have moved on from here." The man answered, "I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. "Here comes the dreamer," they said to each other. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say to our father that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes out of his dreams." But he has a brother named Reuben. Reuben heard this, and he tried to rescue him from their hands. And I'll just go to the slides where the verses are. "Let's not take his life," he said. "Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him." Huwag niyo po siyang sasaktan, sabi ni Reuben. And don't kill him. Reuben said this. He said that so that later on, he can come back and rescue Joseph and bring him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. Yung pong cistern, actually it's a water tank underground. So probably during rainy season, it may be full of water. But during this time, it was empty. And they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it. And they sat down to eat their meal. Alam niyo ba, up to this day, these two well still exist. And one of them was named the Pit of Joseph. It could be our places to go. Sometimes we go to. So they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain if we will kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, nagkaroon sila ng idea. Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and lay not our hands on him. After all, he is our brother." His brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, they pulled out his brother from the cistern, and then they sold him out for 20 shekels. Another 20 shekels of silver. If you will give it a value to current days, this is approximately $400. So he was sold for $400. In pesos, like 20,000 pesos. These Ishmaelites took him to Egypt. So ano lang sila? They're merchants. So ibibenta uli siya. Definitely for a higher cost. When Reuben returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, "The boy isn't there. Where can I turn now?" Then they got Joseph's robe. At kanilang palabas, they slaughtered a goat and they dipped Joseph's robe into it para mukhang siya ay nasaktan or kinain ng mga wild animals. You see, it all began because of the favored status Jacob placed on Joseph over all the other sons. As I was saying before, Joseph was a spoiled son, and since he was the favorite of Jacob. And sometimes he was flaunting about it. He does not care whether divulging his dreams may offend his brothers. This favor included making Joseph a very special coat of many colors and using him to spy on his brothers, as I have mentioned earlier. So you see, Joseph's status now was that of being the favorite son. This is his status. So at that time, meron na account si Joseph sa kanyang status, favorite son. To make matters worse, Joseph foolishly began to boast about his futuristic dreams, where one day he would rule over his entire family. May kaya ba si Joseph, Kasi he has this ability to interpret the dreams. And he was flaunting about it. Mukhang pinapa-apura ko. Anyway, as As we fix the slide, I will just read from my draft. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." So it all points out to his 11 brothers, wherein in his dreams, he is the superior. All of them will bow down to him. So you see, the envy and hatred was simmering in the hearts of his brothers and had now reached boiling point, with trouble about to burst. I will carry on. His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule over us?" This is what they were saying. And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. So his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So as we read, as we read further in Genesis 37, the brothers got their opportunity for revenge and initially planned to kill Joseph. But thanks to the intervention of Reuben and Judah, they put him in a cistern and decided to sell him off as a slave. So verse 25 says that they actually started to have a meal while he was in the cistern, and eventually they sold him off to a band of Midianite merchants, who in turn sold him to Egypt to Potiphar. So this is the new character, Potiphar, the captain of the Pharaoh's guard. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. So because of his brother's rejection and betrayal, Joseph lost all his rights and now became a slave. So one can only imagine the pain and loneliness that this young man went through. It is certain that he would have been treated harshly, maybe viciously, by the slave traders. Maybe we have not experienced this, or none of us, like Filipinos, maybe we have not experienced this, or we have no clear idea how this experience. But being sold as a slave is something, I think, really very harsh. God, however, was with Joseph and gave him favor with Potiphar, who began to see the unique faith, wisdom, and skills this young Hebrew slave possessed. So, if you're a believer, it will definitely show. It will manifest in your life. So they will see it. You cannot hide that if you are a true believer. So yung experience na yun, yung nag-share ni Joseph sa sambahayan, in the household of Potiphar, it's something that blessed Potiphar and his household. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. So Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. So ito po, we can see yung gradual succession ni Joseph, kung paano siyang nagmula sa being a favorite son, then naging now favorite slave, and then he's gaining favor from the eyes of Potiphar. So Joseph's status again had changed from being a favorite son to being favorite slave. So once in a while, he's doing this status upgrade. As a result, Potiphar now put Joseph in charge of his entire household and everything he owned. So ano siya, parang po siyang katiwala na, no? Si Joseph. God in turn blessed Potiphar and his household in abundance because of Joseph. When you gain God's favor, He will multiply His blessings on you and the earthly master you are serving. So from the time he put him in charge of his household and all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar had left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Now, ito po yung transition. Now, Joseph was well built and handsome. So talagang kinukoy po, So handsome si Joseph. Similarly, even in our afflictions or suffering, God can still make us a blessing to others. Joseph's status is now changed even further. He moved from being favorite son to favorite slave, and now Potiphar's favorite executive. Para na po siyang CEO ni Potiphar sa kanya pong munting Potiphar Enterprise. So, God had made him fruitful through rejection. Brothers and sisters, rejection is always painful, especially when the blow comes from someone we have loved or someone we have helped. Maybe you are going through some rejection right now. Maybe in your marriage, in your relationship, maybe in your workplace, and the pain has become unbearable. I remember a long time ago, I remember a lady telling me, after a painful separation, I have no more tears to cry. But no matter how bad the rejection, God can still make you fruitful like He did for Joseph. So the lady mentioned about, too, had a very fruitful life. And thereafter, because she was serving God wholeheartedly. So let's also not forget that the skills Joseph developed in Potiphar's house were more or less what he needed later to rescue Egypt and the surrounding nations. Similarly, God can teach us valuable lessons and enhance our skills in the midst of rejection and other afflictions. Here's an illustration wherein in 1 Samuel 23, there is a story of how David rescued the city of Keilah from the Philistines. Now, King Saul subsequently found out that David was in Keilah and decided to surround him or the city to capture David. When David heard about this, he inquired of the Lord as to whether the people of Keilah, the very ones he had saved, would hand him over to Saul. And to his dismay, the Lord answered, the Lord revealed to him that they would surely betray him. Talk about rejection and ingratitude. The Lord, however, saved David and taught him to rise above ingratitude. And the Lord made David fruitful, as we all know. So he became fruitful through false accusation. As Joseph began to prosper in Potiphar's household, there is a new challenge that developed or building up. Kasi ito pong wife ni Potiphar was attracted to Joseph. Kasi they mentioned he was well-built and guapo. So she got attracted to Joseph. And she tried to seduce him. So soon he was facing consistent sexual harassment at his workplace. Because that household is the very workplace of Joseph. And in that household, the wife of Potiphar was seducing Joseph. So, women are not the only victims of sexual harassment. Men also are victims of sexual harassment. And this is true. So eventually, when she thought she had trapped him into a compromising situation, kasi inaraw-araw po siya yung asawa ni Potiphar. Inaraw-araw niya si Joseph. He was trying to attract him, to distract him every day. And then, to the point na nasa na si Joseph into a very compromising situation. So, at that instance, Joseph ran away. Because he did not want to either hurt God or his chairman, Potiphar himself. So as a result, Potiphar's wife used that opportunity to exact her full revenge on him by saying false accusation about Joseph trying to molest her. And she succeeded. Because of her false accusation, Joseph was unjustly thrown into prison. Ito naman po, yung trial ni Joseph. This time, because of false accusation, he is being thrown into a prison. So, you see, church, the cutting wounds of false accusations come to all of us at some time or another. Ang mahirap po talagang labanan is yung character assassination. Even in your workplace or maybe in the family or in the society. It is one of the most difficult challenges a human can face. It's also amazing how such false accusation can travel like a lightning. Para pong chismis yan di ba? Yung character assassination, parang chismis yan Ang bilis kumalat. So, these days, as you would notice, back home, kasi our Senate is doing a lot of inquiries, di ba? Every week meron Senate inquiries. What's so common about these inquiries is that a lot of people, witnesses, and even these involved in these issues, they are only doing character assassination. That's the best they can do. Character assassination. So when you do that, para mo nang nahusgahan yung tao. So, without evidence, they're doing this false accusation. It's really difficult to face this kind of challenges. So how we handle it will determine how fruitful we will be through it. So the character of Joseph, he's not the type who is grumbling or complaining about it. Instead, he trusted in the Lord, and the Bible says that the Lord was with Joseph and made him fruitful in the midst of his affliction. He will be with us too. Trials and afflictions and sufferings, these are all of temporary nature. They will pass. And the sun will soon rise. There was a pastor who was once accused falsely by someone, maybe a church member or maybe a leader. And this gentleman of God, the pastor, in response, sabi niya, can I bring a bucket of water? And he requested permission to wash the feet of this brother who is aggrieved na nagreklamo po. So even though the accusations were false, ginawa po niya yung humble act na yun. So the accuser broke down in tears with this humble act of the pastor. seeking forgiveness for the things he had said. He became fruitful through the affliction of false accusation. So as the story continues, in chapter 14, the king's cupbearer and chief baker were thrown into the same prison as Joseph for what could have been a possible assassination attempt on the king. So they thus came under Joseph's influence. So sometime later, kasi in prison, ito po yung dalawang new character, the cupbearer and the chief baker. So they were together with Joseph in that cellar, in that prison cell. So these two, they also had their own dreams. And these dreams, Joseph tried to interpret them accurately. You know, what's the end result? The end result is that the chief cupbearer was restored back to his position while the chief baker was executed. Ito po yung nangyari, exactly as Joseph predicted. So in verses 14 to 15, we find Joseph pleading with the chief cupbearer to speak to the king on his behalf once he is released, stating his innocence to the accusation brought against him. Sadly, so ano po, no? They gained favor in dalawang ano na yan, prisoner, the cupbearer and the chief baker. Wherein the cupbearer, siya po yung naristo sa kanyang pwesto sa kanan ng Pharaoh. Siya po yung nag-aabot ng cup sa Pharaoh. So, ang bili niya, pwede ba, pagka nakalaya ka na, i-build up mo naman ako para build me up in front of the Pharaoh that I am innocent. Oh, sige, sabi. Kaso nakalimutan. Sadly, the chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. In fact, his forgetfulness lasted 2 long years. Tagal na po. Naging mulyanin siya. Joseph was learning to be fruitful through the affliction of being forgotten. So all that time, he was in prison. 2 years siya naghintay. What about you, brothers and sisters? Have your efforts and hard work or the promise made been forgotten? Pwede po, no? I remember in my own experience, when I was in Egypt, I was like working for 7 years without increase. The first 2 years there was increase. And then the succeeding 7 years, walang pagbabago sa iyong salary. So, but I was talking to my boss. And then, I don't know, one day, siguro in ika-8th year, ayun, the Lord moved. At sabi nga, when it rains, it pours. Maybe a close friend, or maybe your boss, or some members in your family have forgotten something that they have promised to you. Maybe your labor in your ministry seems to have been forgotten by others, by the elders, by the church. Do you feel that the Lord may have forgotten you? Just be patient and keep trusting that the Lord, and He will lead you up at the right time. He will not forget you. So, in church, we may be involved in small ministry or small tasks. Maybe taga-ayos ng upuan, taga-buhat or mga tools, mga instruments. Maybe taga-set up ng stage or whatever. It's ushering, you maybe doing programs at the church. Lahat po ng labor na yan is, it will bear fruit at the right time. Just be patient. And as I have said earlier, nothing is permanent. Lahat po tayo, meron po tayo succession, meron po escalation. This is God's plan for us. So, thankfully, this is the important thing, ano po, yung transition naman ng buhay niya ni Joseph. Now, this is the chance of the Pharaoh. He had his own dreams. At yung dreams niya po, the Pharaoh's dreams, nobody could interpret. He called on all the wise men in the kingdom, but nobody can give a proper or correct interpretation to his dreams. Till the time that this cupbearer suddenly natauhan siya, I remember Joseph, marunong siyang interpret. Okay, bring him. Sabi niya, no, you cannot bring Joseph. He's a Hebrew. You cannot set foot in your temple. Bring him in, sabi naman ng Pharaoh. So then came Joseph, and he gave a proper or correct interpretation to the Pharaoh's dreams. And the rest is history. You know what's the Pharaoh's dreams? He had two dreams also. One is that there were 7 calves, or 7 cows, healthy, good-looking cows. And then came 7 very bad-looking cows, very thin, or they devoured these 7 healthy cows. Then the second dream was that there were 7 healthy grains, maybe wheat or rice, and then came 7 bad grains that also devoured these 7 healthy grains. So his interpretation was that throughout the land, not only in Egypt, but also in the neighboring countries, there will be drought for 7, or famine in 7 years. 7 years. Then following that 7 years of, there will be 7 years of harvest na masagana, prosperity, ano po. Throughout the land, sabi niya, you will have a lot of harvest, either livestock or either sa iyong fields. And then that will be followed by another 7 years of famine, wherein talagang walang kita and lahat magsasuffer. So this alerted the Pharaoh. And because Joseph is wise, he was asked his opinion, kung anong dapat gawin. So he knows exactly what to do. He's a wise man. So he was actually, by the time he interpreted the dreams, at that instance also he was appointed to be his right hand. So most people in our society, we search for the right contacts, maybe clients or colleagues, to enrich our network through conferences or through seminars and other events. As you know, sa atin po yun ang significant. Pero you see how Joseph influenced or used this contact inside the prison cell. Amakin niyo po, inside the prison cell, yung pala yung tamang contact, yung cupbearer, para makarating sa Pharaoh. So this is very unexpected. So accurately, Joseph was released from prison and promoted to the second highest position in Egypt. That was at the age of 30. So he was also assigned the huge task of saving the nation of Egypt and the surrounding world from famine that was about to break out. So Joseph handled the task to perfection. And in the process, he was used by God to bring restoration to his family and also to save the nation of Israel. I'll take you back sa map po. So that during those times, time ng famine, or even before that, yung time po ng this is the Sinai Peninsula. Diyan po yung, yung boundary ng Egypt. And Egypt goes downwards. And this is Canaan, this is Israel. Or part of this is Palestine. Yung pong family ni Jacob and his 12 sons, they were originating from Hebron. So, during the time kung saan nandun po yung famine, so it was all over, not only in Egypt. It was also happening in the neighboring countries. So they felt the need to buy food from elsewhere. Because they heard that there was grain in Egypt. So the family of Jacob, he sent his son to go to Egypt to buy grain. So they traveled that far from Hebron all the way to Egypt to buy grain. So what we're saying here, kasi nung time na yun, they were in Israel, and nauna po si he was sent for ahead of them, Joseph. Siya po yung nauna. And this is God's plan. He was sent forth ahead. Mag-isa niya. But he gained that top position. And then came the time, dahan-dahan, yung angkan niya, yung family niya, ay nagpupunta na ng Egypt to look for food. And they used that famine to access Egypt. And then, to the point na kung saan, yung conclusion po ng story na yan is, the whole clan of Jacob this is a family of 70. They all moved to Egypt. They all moved to Egypt. So galing po sila ng Palestine. They all moved to Egypt. Kung saan, when they all moved to Egypt, they became so numerous, and they really multiplied by the hundreds of thousands. So this is the good thing about this. Ginamit po si Joseph to bring his family to Egypt. But yung sad part noon siguro, during this long duration, it was like 4 centuries. Of course, Joseph passed away and his 12 brothers. Then came new rulers who doesn't know Joseph and his family. So they were so harsh, they were so cruel. And that time, all the Israelites, they became slaves. And then during that duration, during that 350 years, there was no direct communication from the Lord to His people. It seems that the Bible was silent about it. So, yan po yung transition. After Jacob and Joseph, and then the 12 tribes, yung 300 years to 400 years, na kung saan, sobrang dami na ng Israelites. That's the time kailangan nila ng liberator because they were being used as slaves. Kasi po, nung time na yun, boom ang construction sa Egypt. Because yung Pharaoh, he had so many plans. Kailangan mag-build ng maraming barn to store their wheat and grains. And then, during, I will recount the time wherein yung mga brothers ni Joseph, they were trying to get the right to buy food. They were approaching him because he was the second powerful man in Egypt. You see, yung situation po na yun, this was among the strangest struggle of the Bible. Kasi Joseph, he could have treated the situation right there and then, whatever he decides. Like, he could have forgotten them, he could have taken revenge on them, he could do any of those, but he did not. But what he did is that he did a lot of elaborate tests and demanding from them, or playing tricks on them, accusing them. He was saying, "You are all spies, you come here, 10 of you, and then you're just pretending as your buyers of grains." But he was trying to extract from them what is their family background. In fact, they were his brothers. but they want to extract from them their history. And then they want them to express what really happened. They want to hear from them. So this is what Joseph was trying to play in front of his brothers. For nearly 2 years, he played these games. So they brought confusion and fear to his brothers and admission of guilt. So you see, 20 years had not erased brothers' memory of Joseph. So the moment their troubles began, they realized, they said to one another, surely we are being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we would not listen. For Joseph, the drama brought tremendous emotional strain. And you see, in this situation, he was trying to show that he's a strong person, Joseph. But then, the Bible said, for almost 5 times, he wept due to a struggle. Because he was so emotional for his situation. He was like, in one instance, he was crying so loud that the people in the next room can hear him cry. So, he wanted to reconcile with his brothers, whom he loved. But it was not easy. Because of what he had gone through, it's not easy. So he had to reach that point until they had been pushed to the point of admitting and accepting their guilt. Otherwise, reconciliation could not work. So you see, this bitterness has been deep-rooted. And the only thing na ma-resolve ko yun is yung talagang they express everything in front of one another. So they reconcile yung mga kapatid niya at si Joseph. They reconcile. There was a time na during those struggle, sabi niya, okay, you come here to buy grain and you're saying yung ama niyo nasa Hebron, sabi niya. And then meron siyang maliit na bunso na naiwan doon. Sabi niya, bring the youngest to me. Sabi niya, otherwise you will remain here as prisoners. And if you're not telling the truth, you will all die. Sabi niya. So, umabot yung point na yun, pumayag mas sa loob niya si Jacob, na isend yung kanyang bunso. Kasi maybe kapahamakan yung kasunod niya. Maybe it's danger awaiting the youngest. But anyway, he sent him off. So when he reached Joseph, they actually reconciled. And that is witnessed by the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh said, Joseph, why don't you bring your family over? Parang ganun. So, bring your ailing father and the rest of your clan, your valuables, just come over. Pero may mga belongings nyo kasi marami naman, you can enjoy everything that Egypt has. Parang ganun offer sa kanya eh. So ganun na nangyari. Parang tayo. Dito ka, meron kang opportunity. Bring your wife. Bring your brothers. Bring everyone. Diba? Mag-work kayo dito. Parang ganun. So, sabi niya, here, mayaman ng Egypt. So, we have grains. So, come here. Bring your family. Enjoy here. Yun yung time ng Pharaoh na yun. Kasi he was so pleased with Joseph. But after that, nag-iba na. Diba? Kasi yung mga guests na yan, naging slaves. So, Joseph's status had changed once again from being favorite son to favorite slave to favorite executive and now to being the favorite diplomat. In this sense of Joseph's victory is the story of God and His people. The struggle to root out the sin that began in Genesis 3. Victory over sin does not happen automatically or easily. Ultimately, it demanded the death of God's Son. So Joseph's story points towards Jesus, a man God sent to save His people, one who was hated and betrayed by them, just as Joseph was. But God's will to save conquers all. As Joseph told his brothers, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish the saving of many lives. Kasi yung yung skill ni Joseph sa pag-interpret ng dreams, nagamit yon to be able to detect in advance yung parating na famine. At kung saan yung 7 years naman ng prosperity, they used that to gather all the harvest para meron silang stock sa darating na 7 years of famine. At since ito ay laganap, so yung position ni Joseph na yun, nagamit yun para yung kanyang angkan ay madala po sa Egypt, and then to save many lives. So, you see, at that time, many people from different countries, they were actually entering Egypt to buy grains. So marami itong na-save. Otherwise, maraming mag-perish. So where did Joseph acquire these skills needed for this massive operation? Massive operation in the sense, malungkong Egypt. And it was written in the Bible that he went all over Egypt to collect grains para makapag-save po for the famine. So he saved, he was like, he gained this training in the house of Potiphar, wherein siya ay naging preso, wherein siya ay kaharap ng rejection, wherein siya ay falsely accused, wherein siya po ay totally forgotten for that 2 years. So, Genesis closed with Jacob's family of 70 moving to Egypt. So kanina nga po, I was saying, ito po yung little preview ng a little preview of Exodus, the next book after Genesis. But in the opening scene of Exodus, 350 years later, nung pagkamatay nila Joseph and his clan, hundreds of thousands of their ancestors were toiling on Pharaoh's huge construction projects, not as guests, but as slaves. So during those nearly 4 centuries, the Israelites, they endured oppression from the tyrant Pharaohs. Yung pong story na yan, this will pave way for the coming of a new liberator, who is Moses. Maybe I will tackle Moses in the next sermon. But here's, in closing, I would like to share an article which is it's about the growth of church, actually behind struggles or affliction. It's from Michael Dudwit, wherein the subject here is China. In a recent Breakpoint commentary, Eric Metaxas writes, "You have all probably heard about China in the recent years. How it is threatening the region, di ba? Even our own country, di ba? Inoccupy nila yung islands, and they built their massive buildings, even an arsenal, and they were threatening peace in the Pacific. So they had the military base na doon in the artificial islands. So you've also heard presidential candidates warns that China may soon overtake the US as a leading global economic power. But what you didn't realize is that China is ready to overtake the US in another area. Ito po another area. It is on the size of Christian population. You see, despite years of often savage oppression, the church in China is growing by leaps and bounds. Would you believe, ang estimate ko ngayon sa China ng mga Christian population is around 60 million? Ito pong sabi rito. From the time, Yu Jie, a writer and dissident from China, tells the story powerfully in the August issue of the First Things magazine, wherein Yu reports that since 1949, when the communists took over and Christian missionaries were expelled, the number of Christians in China has multiplied from 500,000 to more than 60 million. So, if the current growth rates continue, by the year 2030, the Christians in China will exceed 200 million. And this will make China the country with the largest Christian population in the world. And how the author became disillusioned with communism after the Tiananmen Square massacre might be very well a little bit cautious in his estimates. Because another body is estimating not 60 million, but actually 105 million Christians all around China are actually available na 105 million. Which is actually, nasa pawan niya na yung 70 million na member ng Communist Party. Either way, it's easy to see that Chinese church has been unbroken by the decades of communist opposition. These days, few Chinese outside the party believe in communism, and the church has begun to feel the resulting spiritual and worldview values. Groups of young, well-educated, and active professionals have gathered in urban churches. Yu says, smashing the stereotype in many Chinese people's minds of Christians as elderly, infirm, sick, or disabled. These churches are the first step toward Christians assuming leadership in the development of a Chinese civil society independent of government control. God can do the same for you and for me, and truly make us fruitful through our sufferings. To God be the glory. Amen.
Lord, yes, amen. Can all stand for our victory song?
Amen. Hallelujah, Jesus. Are we blessed?
Yes.
Amen. Nakaka-bless po yung sinabi ni Pastor, si Pastor Ronnie po, no? So, naalala ko lang pong verse doon, sabi doon, sa Romans 8:28 po, if God is for us, who is against us? And sabi nga, kagaya po ni Joseph, no, na-accuse siya, pero still, naging tapat pa rin siya sa ating Panginoon Diyos. And dapat ganun din po tayo. Sabi nga po, in every pain na nararanasan natin, there's always a purpose. And in every struggle na nararanasan natin, there's always a reason, no, dun sa lahat na nangyayari na yun. And syempre, at the end of the day, there's always a reward para sa atin sa pagiging faithful natin sa ating Panginoon Diyos. Nakagaya din ni Joseph. And sabi nga po dun sa kanta, no weapon forms against, we shall remain. No? Kahit anong mangyari, mag-stay pa rin tayo sa presence ng ating Panginoon Diyos. No? Kasi si Lord ang victory natin and nandito siya sa ating puso and He is here. Amen. Hallelujah.
Nandili po tayong nakatayo para sa ating closing prayer. Thank you, Father God, for using Elder Ronnie as your mouthpiece to relay your word to us. Thank you for the life of Brother Ronnie that you use so we can hear your word. Thank you, Father, to the scripture, to your word, to the history of Israel, to the history of Joseph. Thank you, Father, that we see his life in our mind. This is a miserable life, Father. He was being rejected. He was being accused falsely. And he was forgotten. But in all of this affliction, you used to show us that you are still God who control everything. You can make the life of every Christian fruitful through affliction. Like Joseph, Father, you use him to save the clan of Gicm, the Israel. In spite of all the experience of Joseph, you use him to continue your plan for Israel. And now, Father, we are here. Everybody have affliction. Everybody have experience. And being a believer, we still have rejection. We are rejected by our family. We are rejected by our friends and believers. They are accusing us for believing Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. For believing Jesus Christ is the only way for salvation. We experience persecution to these people, to unbeliever people. We have been falsely accused. In our work, we have been rejected. Salamat, Father, dahil kayo ang nagbibigay ng lakas ng loob sa amin. You give us strength. And we know that in all of these afflictions, you can use us to become a blessing to others. You can use us as fruitful as you want to bless others. And this is our prayer. Use our life, Father, to become a blessing, to become a fruitful servant of yours. Salamat, Panginoon, sa mga salita mo, Panginoon. Salamat sa nuntunan namin. Salamat dahil ikaw ang Diyos namin. To Him who is able to keep you from falling and to present you before His glorious presence without fault and with great joy, to the only God, our Savior, be glory, majesty, power, and authority through Jesus Christ our Lord, before all ages, now and forevermore. Amen. Amen. bago tayo magkaroon ng lunch fellowship. Huwag po kayo maalis dahil meron po sa mga bisita namin, we have a lunch fellowship. Okay? And what is this? Not my birthday. Whose birthday is this? Si Ate Sherry. Ate Sherry's birthday and brother. There's three person, no? Ate Jessica ka. Yung isa si brother. Wala rito, no? Okay. So it is the birthday of our sister and we have a program. Okay? It is a part of our program to celebrate the birthday. Okay? For the whole month, no? Magsasama-samahin natin and then we will give them a cake. And of course, we have to sing for them. Okay? So let's sing. Don't let me lead you because I'm sure you will be listening through my prayer. Okay? Who want to lead for... not me. Because my happy birthday is very lonely.
Let's all stand and then put up our hands. Okay? Okay? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you.
One more time, happy birthday! Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
Happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Only, ha? And then cook and do for you. I want to blow right.
Okay na lang, okay? Oh, picture na, happy birthday.
Yung ano na yan, table na yan.
Let's all sit down first. We have another program, okay? We have a, part of our program is to welcome our visitor. Of course, pakitabi nyo na ito, yan. Okay? We want to welcome our visitors and,
Yes, sir.
okay? Okay, yeah. And we give something to them, okay? What's that? Okay, a piece of appreciation of attending our worship service for being with us, okay, in our worship service. Okay, it was written here, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good work or good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Matthew chapter 5 verse 16. Okay, so I want to call Brother Dapo, Adinei, and Sister Bola Adinei. Okay, welcome. They are from Nigeria. Amen. Let's welcome them. Welcome, Sister Bola and Brother Dapo. And also I want to call on Julius Matutira and Norman Jimenez. Yan, si Norman at si Ron. Okay. Si Jamila Herrera. Yes, welcome here. Welcome here. Ate Jamila. Okay. Jamila. Ito po. A token of appreciation of being with us together to worship our Lord. Thank you very much for attending and we hope that this is not your first and last to attend our worship service or to become with us worshiping our God. Amen. Let's give them a clap. Thank you. Pray mo yung food. Okay, let's all stand so that we can pray for our physical blessing.
Yes, Lord, hallelujah. Pagpukit at pasasalamat, Panginoon, ang ating pinabalik namin sa iyo sa araw na ito, Lord God. We thank you, Father God, for your words na hinatid sa amin ni Elder Lord sa umaga ito, Lord Father God. At also maraming salamat, Panginoon, sa physical blessings na aming tatanggapin sa araw na ito na aming pagsasalusaluhan, Panginoon, sa kapat na ito sa iyong tahanan, Lord Father God. Panginoon, maraming salamat naman, Panginoon, pagkalinisin mo ito, Panginoon. At gawin kalakasa sa aming mga katawan na magamit namin, Panginoon, sa araw nito, sa mga nagtitirapang oras sa araw nito, Lord God. Be with us, Father God, for the rest of the day, Lord Father God. Lahat po na ito ay aming sabot dalangin sa pangalan ni Jesus. Amen and amen. God bless everyone.